This was truly a remarkable case. First, because it was on my receptionist, Jennifer. Second, because we used it as a live demonstration for a 2-day course in Santa Barbara. And the case came out pretty nice. We see the preoperative graph exhibiting severe curvature on this upper left first molar, tooth number 14. And from the distal angle, we would expect to find an MB2 canal, so we'll be certainly looking for that. We come into the case as the procedure has just begun, and we've gotten through into the pulp chamber. You can see pulp stones coming out. This tooth has obviously been inflamed for various reasons in the past, most likely previous decay and restorations. You can see a buck 1 ultrasonic tip making a trough along the mesial wall of the access cavity, the pulp chamber. You can see the dark color of the pulp chamber floor. Here we see the round end of the buck 1 starting at the mesial buccal 1 orifice and cutting a smooth arc towards the palatal. But notice that, importantly, the tip is at almost a 45-degree angle. Once we cut a little bit of that shelf back, we go in with the LA access and unroof it so we can see better. And 17% aqueous EDTA is wonderful for removing all those little dust motes that get in your way. You can see the dark and the light intersection. That's where we're going to find an MB2. This is the ultrasonic tip, again at that severe mesial apical angle. And I'm cutting under the mesial marginal ridge, a little bit more EDTA to get rid of the dust. So we can really, you want visualization to be ideal here. And it's right under where the light goes to the dark. I'm using a 1504 Vortex rotary file. It's one of my favorite initiation instruments. Here's a 1506. I'm more likely to use the 1506. It's a little hardier. They're wonderful for finding canal orifices that are hidden or at different angles. And then once I have them open up a little bit, I'm going to cut a little groove leading into that MB2 canal because it's the only canal orifice in upper molar or in any of these teeth that doesn't have a line angle of the access cavity dropping right down into it. That'll save us a bunch of time throughout the rest of the case. Lubricant is so important to negotiation procedures. It's going to stabilize your apex locator readings. It's going to help you avoid blockage of vital tissue in small molar canals. One of my favorite instruments is the small tip Vortex files. This is a 1504 rotary Vortex. We're going to use the 1506 as well. These are fantastic as the first instrument to length. You wouldn't think so, but in the presence of a lubricant, we can even put an apex locator on them and determine length. Now that I'm going to switch from lubricants to sodium hypochlorite, this has been a while ago. I have a different regimen now. I thought it would be great to put rubber dam seal around the tooth, so if any of the solutions get out, we're not going to have it in the patient's mouth. Once negotiation procedures are finished, we have a 15 or larger at the terminus with an apex locator length determined. Then the lubricant is changed out for sodium hypochlorite. This is a 2006 GTX file cutting. It's the first instrument in a small canal. The canal is tight, and so I'm doing my typical workaround. I'm taking the 2004, which is more flexible. Now, once that file has enlarged the terminus just a little bit to 0.2 millimeters, the 2006 has a better chance of getting the length, and we see here indeed it has. I find it very informative to look at the flutes of the instrument after it's retrieved. We see debris only in the center flutes here, telling us the file did not cut at its tip. Irrigation with EDTA solution, preparation for gauging. The 15K file drops through the terminus. We're seeing if the 20 binds at length or drops through. It slightly goes through. The 30 steps back just a bit. I'm going to clear again with the 15. That is my patency file. You can see I'm at least a millimeter patent. And this is going to need to be finished with a larger tip diameter 06. It's going to be a 2006, a 3006, or a 4006 in a small molar canal. This 3006 is going to cut right to length, much easier than the 2006. We can see debris along the whole length of the file. The flutes are packed because the file is bigger than the canal wall, so when we get that thing to length, there's high likelihood that our taper is continuous and complete to the terminus. 2006 is being placed in the MB2 canal. You can see it's much easier to cut. Of course, we would only see debris in the coronal half of the flutes because these are confluent canals, and the apical half of the MB1, which this joins, has already been prepared. EDTA is placed in both canals. The 15 is used to drop through the terminus again. This is being gauged through the MB2 canal. The 20 goes to length easily. The 30 goes to length. 40 steps back about a half a millimeter. You can see it's firmly binding, and here's the 20 being dropped through. It's a little scratchy. There we go. It's a millimeter through, and that's the requirement for patency prior to cone fitting. System B plugger fit is occurring here. Push on the plugger, it's disattached from the handpiece. Push on it as you rock it back and forth. The canal bends the dead soft stainless steel plugger, and we're moving the silicon stop to the reference point so that we can see the two pluggers and if they both fit the same depth. If they fit the same depth, we're going to use the larger of the two. GTX paper points are being used here to dry the canal. After 2 or 3 of them, the third or fourth is used to slip through the end of the root canal, carefully grab at the reference point, touch the end, the wet part bends, measure the dry part. It's a remarkably accurate last confirmation of length. The gutter perch point's being placed the first time carefully, the second time it's coated with sealer. The sealer will get all the way to the end of the canal. Without the second coating, it is typical that you're a little light on sealer. There we have the MB2 canal that's been fit up against it. The System B heat plugger has seared off at an angle the gutter perch cone sticking out of the MB2 canal orifice. Now we're going to sear off the MB1 cone. Again, the back end of the number 1 plugger, the one with the red color band, it's 0.9 millimeters, fits perfectly in GTX orifice enlargement. And now we're ready for downpacking the MB2 first. This is the 06 plugger we fit there. We push on it, and as soon as the button's pressed, it takes off because the heating action occurs within a half second. It's at length. We wait until there's the single click of the unit. When 5 seconds has gone by, we make sure we haven't pulled the cone out. Put the small end of the number 1 plugger. This is 0.4 millimeters. You can see the red thing, the red band there. Here we are downpacking the MB1 canal, holding the hand plugger in the MB2 at the same time so that we don't have a release of the back pressure, so we get a very three-dimensional fill. And here's the Elements Obturation unit. Got a perch extruder. It's a mechanized backfilling device. The needle is put in place in the backfill space. It's held there for 5 seconds, and as soon as it fills the space ahead of the needle, I feel the needle bump back. If I take the small end of the blue plugger, which is about 0.7 millimeters, I find I can condense the material at that level where that needle bumps back perfectly with small end of the blue plugger. After 5 seconds, the needle can reheat after being chilled by the patient's tooth, and larger and larger pluggers can be used to condense that material as we back our way out of the canal. And we see the post-op radiograph showing a very nice dense fill. We see an excellent three-dimensionality about the apical region. We see lateral canal or 2 filled in the palatal root. We see nice apical control in each of the roots. We see the 2 canals in the MB root merging mid-root and exiting as one. So that's nice. We can have a lot of confidence that we've been really thorough there. So apparently a happy ending, right? Well, actually, 6 months later, Jennifer comes to me and says her tooth hurts to biting pressure. Not good. We take a CT scan, and what we see on there is a palatal root tip that is perfect in both the mesial and the buccal views. Distal buccal root tip and the fill next to very healthy bony tissues, no signs of a lesion there. And when we take the mesial view and the buccal view of the MB root, we see from the buccal a small halo around the root apex of the MB root. And from the mesial, we see a lesion, not at the root apex like we expected it, but a little shy of the apex. It's on the palatal side where there's a second canal We see in this other CT scan blown up that even though the two canals merged and appeared to exit as one, at the point of merging, they also bifurcated again, and I missed it before. Couldn't get my file into it, didn't look for it because I didn't think it was there. I was pretty proud of finding the MB2 canal, and when it merged, I just felt like, hey, this is going to be an easier case than I thought. Turned out to be not the case. So with that knowledge, treatment plan on this is retreat the mesial buccal root, the root canal system inside of it, and get the last 6 or 7 millimeters of that canal with its own apical exit point. Get that taken care of well. See if it doesn't take care of all of her sensitivity. We see the winged clamp, the rubber dam being popped off there with a 17 Explorer. These are serrated clamps. They hang on to teeth very nicely. We're drying the tooth around. I'm a big fan of ultra dense block-out resin. It's very simple to put on, and it breaks off the tooth almost immediately when the clamp is removed. It just comes off with it. Takes very little time. If you have any irrigants leak, you don't have to worry about it because it's held within this seal. Using a number 6 round burr to carefully take out the cavity, not wanting to make the access cavity any bigger than it was in the first working visit or the first treatment regimen. And here we see the MB1 and the MB2. You can see the MB2 cotomy groove there. Everything's still looking pretty pristine. It's not like we have a bunch of stinky stuff going on in the pulp chamber, even though it wasn't restored. I like taking this out initially with just a buck 1 round-ended ultrasonic tip. You can see it immediately just drops through it. And the diamond coating on that is also effective in pulling the gutta percha out. After that, I like to follow with a 2004 GTX rotary file at 600 RPM. And that will typically kind of heat up the tip of the file due to the friction from the rotation. And if you move it as it's rotating in a counterclockwise direction, as you saw there, it will tend to wind a rope of gutta percha out. So we have the great majority of that out already. Let's put it in the adjacent canal because some of it is over there before the point of confluence. Here's the same 2004, 600 RPM. This is in the MB1 again, which I had cleared, but maybe some of the gutta percha from the MB2 went over there. Okay, I'm almost to length, and I still have the length noted in our chart. Okay, doing the counterclockwise rotation, try and remove any rope of gutta percha that could be in there, and it's just coming out as dust. So in this case with the confluent canals, actually it wasn't that easy to get this gutta percha out. Usually it comes out in a very short period of time. I've learned that using mechanical means, mainly rotary, is the most effective way. It takes far less time than using a solvent like chloroform. I've got the 2004 in there. I'm going to take a larger file and see if that doesn't more closely approximate the canal walls and bring a greater amount of this out. I don't want to start looking for that other canal until I get as much of this gutta percha out as possible. Now the 2006 is in the MB2 canal. I'm doing the counterclockwise rotation. It seems goofy, but it really works. And so it's clear to the terminus of both these canals through the MB2. Now I'm leaving that in place and saying so the gutta percha seems to be moving back and forth through the isthmus area. And so leaving the file in the adjacent canal may allow me to remove down next to it. This is System B heat source. I'm trying to spear it and glue it to the heat source. That got some of it out, but you can see it's still there. It keeps moving back and forth. Here's a little air blast. That got nothing out of the MB1. So here I am still goofing around with the 2006. I didn't edit this out because I wanted you to know that sometimes it just takes a little bit of time. Sometimes it just doesn't fly out of there like we expect. And so you just got to cool your jets a little bit, relax, try and say one of your little meditation mantras and just let it happen in the time frame it's going to happen. Okay, so I put the 25 headstrom in there. I'm threading it down. I'm going to try and spear that little piece of gutta percha moving back and forth. I left the 3006 in the MB1 canal so that it can't move back into there. Now I'm taking a 35 headstrom into the MB1, getting little pieces out the whole time, still not getting it all out. Here's a little bit of chloroform. I finally give up, stir it around in there, again, leaving the file in the MB2, and here's a paper point. I'm going to see if I can't blot, salute that little gutta percha plug moving back and forth. The chloroform is the thing that's worked so far, so it doesn't matter how you do it. Just do whatever works. There's a paper point in the MB2 canal. You can see it actually absorbing in through the point of confluence there. And now we finally got it clean. Here we see a side view. There's still a little bit of gutta percha in the isthmus and the apical third, but we now have the means to bend a file and see if we can't feel it on the palatal side of the MB canal system. We know it's there because from the mesial view of the CT scan. I'm going to take the bent file down to the terminus. The primary canal is shaped, and I'm pulling it back to see if I can feel a little click, and I did, and a little catch. I can get it tugged back. If the file catches in the orifice, I'm golden. And no, that's in the MB1, so it's still loose. You got to do this in a shaped canal, or it's hard to tell what's going on. I'm going to a smaller file. Okay, so the file tip is bent at its tip with an endo bender. I got nothing there. Oh, that's it. I've got the 10 file in the mid-root branch of the MB2 canal. I'm so happy. Do not get excited, overexcited to pull this thing out. You want to just move it little tiny increments, work it deeper. If you can get it patent apically, you'll have a better chance of getting back there. I don't know if I'll ever find it again, so I have to put a little bit of effort in right here. Let's see if I've gotten to length. Yes, indeed. I'm just backing it up a little bit. We're right there. I'm adjusting the stop. Okay, so we have length. We have the file. You can see it there. And the length in that is about 23 millimeters. So now let's see if the 10 can be placed back in. I've got lubricant in the canal. And now I know where it is. I'm going to pull the file back, feeling for a little click. Right there. And when I push down on it and watch wind it, it's in a tight canal instead of a prep canal. And that's where the mental imaging gets to be just a lot of fun. Okay, so now we're even patent. We have an apex locator reading. I've been able to re-enter the canal. The scariest thing of all, after just finding it the first time, I've got a finger rest. I'm going to do little tiny push-pull motions, only a millimeter and a half, so I don't pull the bent tip out of the point of confluence or the point of branching. Once I pull the bent tip out, most likely I'll have to take the file all the way out, rebend it, and then again, hope I can find it. Now it's the more we use the directed stop, the more we know where that file tip is when we enter the orifice, the more likely that we have accurately mapped this and can get right back in. And after a couple of these re-entries, a little bit of push-pull filing, the orifice is getting opened up a little bit, it becomes you could fall into it. So it's just the early phase that you have to be most concerned about. Again, checking with Apex Locator. Anytime you have any questions about, am I there, am I long, am I short, just touch it with an Apex Locator. Don't have it hang on your negotiating file, but the little forked end that's flattened sits on in the patient bib. The ground lead is on the patient's lip underneath the rubber dam, and anytime you need to read, just pick that up and touch it to the file, and bang, instantly you know you're either short, you're there, or you're long. And that's a wonderful thing to know. So you can see me here taking additional files, pre-bent 10 files. Click right there. I can even see it. There we go, right there, yeah. And it's literally just the tip of that bent file snapping past the little orifice that's being drawn back away from the terminus, the primary canal that's been shaped already. So I'm just down here playing. I want to make sure I get lubricants down there, irrigants down there soon. We're going to even have to put a little shape on it. Got a really fun trick for you there. Here's the Stropco tip. Really nice for washing. Everything's looking so nice and clean. Let's put some EDTA solution in there. This retreat was done 9 months later. At this time, I have changed to doing the majority of my shaping, or all of my shaping, all my gauging with EDTA solution in the root canal system, and using hypochlorite only after. So now we take a 15 in. I couldn't get in to start. It took a 10 to get into the orifice, but now with the push-pull filing, okay, I'm in the terminus. I turn it back toward the palatal, pull it up, click, right there. It just gets to be kind of automatic, and again, really fun to own a canal this complex, that completely. Okay, again, finger rest. I don't want to come back and find it after I rebend the file. I want to get there. Let's check for confluence. See if this cone will fit all the way to the terminus through the MB1. Then we have the two separate openings, indeed. And now we see a gutta-percha cone in the MB1 path, and they are the same length or very nearly. So no longer are these two canals merging. This is a Vortex Blue instrument. It is a controlled shape memory file. It's like the 1504 Vortex we used to initially find the canal. We're going to do a little pre-bending, which this is capable of doing. Get the tip of this little thing in. This is a 04, and I'm going to use it by hand. It's a very sharp file. We want to be careful of these instruments in larger tip size. They will wreck the end of a root canal very easily. But here I'm just turning the file on the little handle. It works great. And I have a 1504 shape in our branching canal. Everything we put in there that doesn't block us out, that flares the orifice, makes it easier for the next one. Here's a 1506. Notches on the stop. It's a rotary file, so they don't have an indicator on it. You have to put it on yourself, but we've bent this shape memory file, and let's see if I can get my 15 file in there. There we go. You can tell this is the unshaped one. The other way, it's up to a 3004. Okay, irrigating with sodium hypochlorite. We've got that opened up. We've created a minimal shape. We're not going to fit a cone in it, so I don't need it to be some large taper. We have this number 10K file set a millimeter long. It's in the MB2, the branching MB2 with its own apical portal of exit. It's held a millimeter past the end of that lightly shaped canal, and it's being activated when the ultrasonic tip comes in there. You can see the bubbles coming out. That's a reflection of the connective tissue that's been digested by the hydrolyzation with the sodium hypochlorite. And we fit a cone on the MB1 canal, slide down carefully, just barely touch the reference point, pull it out, lock the pliers, put it on the ruler, cut it to be a 0.5 millimeter short. And we can irrigate. Every time we move the cone in and out, we're freshening the solution at the end of the root canal. And when we have confluent canals like this, we're going to fit one to length, leave it in place, and fit the adjacent one onto it. And an 08 continuous wave plugger is fit, uninserted from the handle. We push on it, we wiggle it. This soft stainless steel bends a bit. We compare it to the cone to see if we're as close as we want and to make sure that we're not too close. We don't want to ever be closer than 4 millimeters. This cone is fit in the MB1 canal. We're going to fit a cone adjacent to it. The untrimmed 06 cone is placed in there. I lightly slide down the cone and measure it. So it's 17.5 millimeters to the point of confluence. Now I'm going to go ahead and start enlarging it. There's a gutta gauge. I can clip it to 20 and see where it fits to. What I want tug back at that length of 17.5 millimeters. That'll help hold this cone in place. We're not going to be fitting in the branching MB2 canal, but here is the fit. So the pluggers are fit, the gutta-percha points are fit. That was cut back a 0.5 millimeter. And GTX 06 paper points are being used. Usually 2 to 3 of them are required to dry the canal. We have a confluent canal adjacent. And after that, the third or fourth is dropped to lengthen beyond. The little feather tip that slips through the end is wet by periapical tissue fluids. When you touch it, it bends. When you measure the dry part, you will have a very accurate representation of the length of the canal. Finally adjusted gutta-percha point with sealer on it. Just move carefully to place, move back and forth 3 or 4 times. Here comes the second gutta-percha point in the MB2 canal. The 08 plugger that's been pre-fit is searing the cone at the orifice of the MB2 canal. We take the fat end of the number 1 plugger, the red plugger. It's 0.9 millimeters and fits the orifice perfectly. We're going to leave that in place until it sets, because when we sear the adjacent one off, we don't want to shoot that cone out because of the back pressure. Here comes the fat end of the number 1 plugger, the red plugger again. And so now both orifice levels have gutta percha condensed there. We have the orifice plugger and the MB2 as I downpack the MB1, holding a sustained condensation force until we hear a click, click, and so it's being worked back. My objective here is to not do a separation burst, it's to back the plugger out and put a backfill cone, auto-fit backfill cone, 08 cone, fits the same space the plugger comes out of. We put a thickly mixed sealer around it, seared off the orifice, condensed the orifice level with a rigid stainless steel end of the number 1 plugger, and then is held there as we downpack the adjacent through the adjacent orifice, the MB2. It's held for 5 seconds until a single click is heard, and then we're going to do a separation burst here, 1001, pause another second, and pull it out. The gutta percha on the side of the plugger is removed. We've condensed the apical mass with a small end of the red plugger, and check it out. The mid-root branch of the MB2 canal has been obturated. The element's obturation unit needle is placed in a 5-second wait, and then the syringe toggle switch is hit. You can see gutta percha came back out of the MB1 orifice. They're connected up there. It's like doing a Chuck E. Cheese, whack-a-mole there. You push on one side and it comes up the other, and so you just keep condensing back and forth. Your plugger acts as a heat sink. It's cooling the soft, sticky gutta percha, and as it shrinks, with that cooling process, we're condensing to make up for the shrinkage so it doesn't come off the canal wall, so that it becomes denser and denser as it sets. And now we see it perfectly dense, very flat, very nice interface for our backfill, for our buildup. The distal view of the backfill shows a very nice fill. On the highly mesial view, we can see the bifurcation back almost at the junction of the middle and apical thirds. We can also see a lateral canal was previously filled in the palatal root as well. So now you know why I said this is a remarkable case. It was on my receptionist. It was done as a live demonstration, and then when it failed, it was done as a live demonstration again, showing the retreat. And it was a failure that was really interesting because of the complex MB2 canal that joined with the MB1 and then bifurcated right off again. And my mistake in this case was thinking that that merging meant there was only a single apical portal of exit, and I relaxed for a second and you can see what happens. Anyway, these upper molars are really complicated, so you got to train up to do them. One of the most important things we saw here was the advantage, the huge advantage we have with volumetric or CT imaging in endodontics. We didn't have to guess what was going on. We saw exactly what was going on. We saw the lesion right next to the MB2 canal terminal of exit, and it actually helped us find the MB2 canal, which is very faint because it was exiting, of course, into the center of the lesion. It's a different world now that we have 3D imaging, and I'm really glad to be a part of it. I hope you can enjoy your cases as much as I do. We'll see you at the Apex.